Shri Gurubhyo Namaha children, I welcome you all to our online English class. In today's class, we are going to see chapter 5 of your Moments English book. Let's see what's listed. The Happy Prince, written by Oscar Wilde. And all of you must be knowing Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde was born on 16th October 1854 and he died on 30th of November 1900. He was an Irish poet and a playwright. He was considered as the greatest poets of the Victorian era, and his famous works are The Picture of the Dorian Gray and The Importance of Being Honest. Let us move into the lesson, children. High above the city, on a tall column, stood the statue of the Happy Prince. So this lesson, the Happy Prince, it is about a prince who was named the Happy Prince. Why was he named Happy Prince? All these things are what we are going to deal through the session, children. He was gilded all over with thin leaves of fine gold. For eyes, he had two bright sapphires, and a large red ruby glowed on his sword hilt. So there was a statue which was erected on a tall column. A tall column means a raised platform. A tall column is a raised platform for erecting the statues. And he was gilded. Gilded means covered with gold, is called as gilded. For eyes, he had two bright sapphires and a large red ruby glowed on his sword hilt. So you could see how rich the Happy Prince was. He was gilded with gold. For eyes, he had bright sapphires, and the sword hilt had a ruby. And a sword hilt is a handle of the sword, and in the handle he had a bright red ruby. So there was the statue of the Happy Prince was erected at the outskirts of the city on a tall column. One night there flew over the city a little swallow. His friends had gone away to Egypt 6 weeks before, but he had stayed behind. So one night, there happened to come a little bird. It is a swallow bird. Swallow is a kind of a bird which you can find in all the continents. The swallow bird came there, and his friends had gone to Egypt, and he alone had stayed back. Then he decided to go to Egypt too. All day long he flew, and at night he arrived at the city. So he decided to stay back, and after which he is moving forward to Egypt, where his friends had gone. While he was traveling, he comes to a place. Where shall I put up? He said. I hope the town has made preparations. So while flying, it has become a night time, so he is finding place to rest. To put up means what? To spend the night or to take some rest. So he was flying and he was deciding where to rest for the night. And he was just thinking to himself that the city would have made some preparations for him to stay. The swallow bird is making this remark to be a bit humorous. Children, he is just saying the city would have given some place for him. They would have made some preparations for him to come and stay. Then he saw the statue on the tall column. I will put up there, he cried. It is a fine position with plenty of fresh hair. So he sees this tall statue and he decides to go and stay there for the night. And he says that's a good place and he could get a lot of fresh air. So he alighted just between the feet of the Happy Prince. I have a golden bedroom, he said softly to himself as he looked around, and he prepared to go to sleep. So he alighted. He alighted means what? He flew down or he descended. Alighted means what? He descended in between the feet of the happy prince. So he decides to stay in between the feet of the happy prince, and on landing there he makes a remark that he has got a golden bedroom. Why? Because the happy prince was gilded. Okay, he was covered with gold, and his bedroom happens to be something which is made out of gold. So he says that he is going to sleep in a golden bedroom. He prepared to go to sleep, but just as he was putting his head under his wings with a large drop of water fell on him. "What a curious thing!" he cried. "There is not a single cloud in the sky. The stars are quite clear and bright, and yet it is raining." So when he went there and he prepared himself to sleep, okay, he is just covering his head using his wings. When he was trying to go to sleep, suddenly a water droplet fell on him. So he was amazed. Okay, he is just looking at the climate. The weather is so clear, and he is confused from where the water droplet is coming. He is confused whether it is raining in spite the weather being clear. Then another drop fell. "What is the use of a statue if it cannot keep the rain off?" he said. "I must look for a good chimney pot." And he determined to fly away. And he continued to sleep, though he was confused. He is just resuming back to his sleep. And once again a huge droplet fell on him. So he was confused this time, and he is telling, what a statue is this? If it cannot keep the bird off the rain, what is the use of a big statue? Okay, he says a chimney pot would be a better place for me to stay. So he was thinking to move away from the place to a chimney pot. Chimney pot means what? Taking shelter in the chimney of a house is referred here as chimney pot. But before he had opened his wings, the third drop fell, and he looked up and saw. What did he see? The eyes of the happy prince were filled with tears, and tears were running down his golden cheeks. So before he could think all these things, another droplet fell on him. So he was now completely confused, and he is looking around to check what was actually happening. When he raised his head above to see, he was able to find that the happy prince was crying. His eyes were filled with tears, and the tears were rolling down his golden cheeks. His face was so beautiful in the moonlight that the little swallow was filled with pity. "Who are you?" he said. "I am the happy prince." "Why are you weeping then?" asked the swallow. "You have quite drenched me." So he is telling, he is just looking, and he has found that the statue has started crying. So he is asking, "Who are you?" So the statue is introducing himself as happy prince. The bird is asking the statue, if in case you are the happy prince, why do you have to cry? Why are you weeping? So that is what the bird is concerned about now. And it is also telling, you have quite drenched me. Drenched me means making completely wet. Okay, the bird has become completely wet with the tears of the happy prince. "When I was alive and had a human heart," answered the statue, "I did not know what tears were, for I lived in the palace where sorrow is not allowed to enter." So when I had a human heart, which means what? When I was alive, okay, only after my death they have erected a statue for me. When I was alive, I lived in a palace, and I did not know what are tears, because I didn't know what sadness was. I was so happy. Sorrow was not allowed to enter. So, he lived in a palace where he couldn't see any sadness at all. My country, my courtiers called me the happy prince, and happy indeed I was. And the prince was called the happy prince, and the prince was eventually happy. So I lived, and so I died. And now that I am dead, they have set me up here so high that I can see the ugliness and all the misery of my city, and though my heart is made of lead, yet I cannot choose to weep. And after his death, okay, the people of the place had made him a statue, and they have erected the statue in a tall place. Okay, from there he is able to see all the sorrows and the ugliness of the country, and he cannot do anything because he is now a statue. Okay, he's just have to see whatever is happening, and he has to cry. What, is he not solid gold? Said the swallow to himself. He was too polite to make any personal remarks. Far away, continued the statue in a low musical voice. Far away in a little street there is a poor house. One of the windows is open, and through it I can see a woman seated at a table. So now we could see the prince is explaining the reason for his sadness, and the bird, okay, here it is making a remark. The prince is he is giving a statement that though his heart is made up of lead, he has to weep. He has no other choice but weep. Only then the bird is realizing that the statue is not made completely of gold. It is just gilded with gold, and the inner parts are made out of lead. And he does not make any personal remarks. He didn't want to give any comments. Okay, and now the happy prince is starting to tell the story of why he is sad. So he is starting the story like this. He says, far away there is a place. Okay, in that I can see a woman who is seated on the table. Her face is thin and worn, and she has coarse red hands, all pricked by needle, for she is a seamstress. So from there, okay, from the height he is able to see a woman. She is seated at her table, and that lady, okay, all her hands have become coarse and rough. Coarse means rough, children, okay. It has become rough, red, and it has been prickled by needles, okay, because she was a seamstress. Seamstress means somebody, okay, they sew, sewing. Okay, somebody who makes a living by sewing is called as a seamstress, and that lady was a seamstress, and because of that her hands had been prickled by needles, and it is rough and coarse. She is embroidering flowers on a satin gown for the loveliest of the queen's maids of honor to wear at the next court ball. So what that lady was doing, she was embroidering flowers on the gown. And for whom was she embroidering this? For the queen's maid of honor. Maid of honor means what? These ladies who accompany the bride is called as a maids of honor. So for their gowns she was embroidering flowers to wear for the next court ball. A ball is a kind of a social gathering where they celebrate. Okay. In a bed in the corner of the room, her little boy is lying ill. He has a fever and is asking his mother to give him oranges. So the lady, she was seated, and behind the lady there was a boy, okay, her boy who was ill. And that boy, because he was ill, he wanted something to eat, and he was asking his mother for oranges. His mother has nothing to give him but river water, so he is crying. Swallow, swallow, little swallow, will you not bring her the ruby out of my sword hilt? So that boy is crying, okay, because the mother is, she doesn't have anything, they are poor, okay. The mother doesn't have any oranges. So she is giving the boy some river water, and because of which the boy is crying. So on seeing this pity scene, the happy prince couldn't control himself but choose to help. He cannot go there and help. So he is asking the swallow bird to help him. Okay, swallow, swallow, little swallow, what you do? You go and bring the ruby from my sword hilt. Let us give the ruby to the lady. My feet are fastened to this pedestal and I cannot move. I am waited for in Egypt, said the swallow. My friends are flying up and down the Nile and talking to the large lotus flowers. Soon they will go to sleep. So now the swallow is explaining his situation. No, I have to fly back to Egypt because my friends have already gone there and they are flying above the Nile. Okay, and they are speaking with the lotus flowers. I must also go and accompany. I must also go and join them before they could go and sleep. I am not in a position to help you. So this is what the swallow is explaining the happy prince. The prince asked the swallow to stay with him for one night and be his messenger. The boy is so thirsty and the mother so sad. He said, I don't think I like boys, answered the swallow. So the happy prince is requesting the swallow bird, why don't you stay with me for one night and help me out, be my messenger, take the ruby to the lady, let the woman, okay, provide the boy some food. Okay, why don't you help me? Let us help the boy. But the swallow, he is replying, I don't like boys and I am eventually not willing to help for any boy. And he says, I have to go back to Egypt. But the happy prince looked so sad that the little swallow was sorry. It is very cold here, he said. But he agreed to stay with him for one night and be his messenger. On seeing the sad face of the happy prince, the swallow agrees to help him. Even though it is cold, okay, for him to stay back, he is accepting the prince's request. Thank you, little swallow, said the prince. The swallow picked out the great ruby from the prince's sword and flew away with it in his beak over the roofs of the town. So the swallow bird, he is going and picking up the ruby from the sword hilt and he is flying, taking it and flying to the woman. He passed by the cathedral tower where the white marble angels were sculpted. So he was flying over the roofs of the town, which means what? He was flying above the houses in the town and he also flew above the cathedral tower. Cathedral means the church. Okay, he was passing over the church tower. And where the white marble angels were sculpted. Okay, in the cathedral tower which is made of a marble, there were angels which were sculpted on it. So he was passing over the cathedral tower. He passed by the palace and heard the sound of dancing. So the next place is, he is moving over the palace and he was able to hear the song and the dancing which was going inside. A beautiful girl came out on the balcony with her lover. I hope my dress will be ready in time for the state ball, she said. I have ordered flowers to be embroidered on it. So there is a girl who is coming and standing on the balcony, okay, and she is talking about the dress which she had given to the seamstress to be for embroidering, okay, and she says that the dress would be ready soon. But the seamstresses are so lazy. So she is talking that the seamstresses are lazy and they would sew it very slowly and eventually it should not be late. So, she is talking about the same seamstress which the prince is trying to help. Okay. He passed over the river and saw the lanterns hanging on the masts of the ship. So, the next thing he is passing over is he is passing over the ships which had the lanterns. Lanterns are lamps. At last he came to the poor woman's house and looked in. The boy was tossing feverishly on his bed and the mother had fallen asleep. She was so tired. So, finally, the bird has reached the woman's house and he entered the house and he was able to see the boy. He was tossing. He was tossing means what? He was turning right and left because he was not able to sleep comfortably, and the woman, she had fallen asleep next to him because she was so tired. In he hopped and laid the great ruby on the table beside the woman's thimble. Then he flew gently round the bed, fanning the boy's forehead with his wings. So, nobody was awake, so he is entering and he is laying the ruby on the table, okay, next to the woman, so that when she wakes up, she would be able to see it. And he is going around the bed and fanning the boy with his wings, so that he will get some air. How cool I feel, said the boy. I must be getting better. And he sank into a delicious slumber. So, when he got this extra air, okay, he was able to feel the cold wind, okay, and he says that I am getting better, and he sank into delicious slumber. Sank means what? Going into a deep sleep, and slumber means sleep, a deep sleep. Then the swallow flew back to the happy prince and told him what he had done. It is curious, he remarked, but I feel quite warm now, although it is so cold. So, the swallow, he is returning back to the happy prince and he is informing what he has done to the boy and the lady, and everything he is going and explaining, and he is also saying that he feels warmth inside because of the good deed he has done. Though the climate is very cold outside, he is having some peace of mind because he has done some good deed. So, that is why he says, I feel quite warm now, although it is cold. That is because you have done a good action, said the prince. And the little swallow began to think and then fell asleep. Thinking always made him sleepy. So, after which the bird is retiring back to sleep. It is going and laying and it starts thinking, and the thought of thinking itself makes the swallow bird to go into a deep sleep. When day broke, he flew down to the river and had a bath. Tonight I go to Egypt, and the swallow, and he was in the high spirits at the prospect. So, when the day started, he is telling, okay, today I will be going back to Egypt. And he was in high spirits means what? He was very happy of the thought that he is going to Egypt. He visited all the monuments and sat a long time on the top of the church steeple. When the moon rose, he flew back to the happy prince. Have you any commissions for Egypt? He cried. I am just starting. Swallow, swallow, little swallow, said the prince. Will you stay with me one night longer? So, morning and all, this swallow bird was roaming around the city when the moon rose, which means what? The daybreak. At the night, he is starting to go to Egypt. Before going to Egypt, he meets the happy prince. Okay, he meets him and he is asking the happy prince whether he has any commission. Commission means if he is having any instruction for him or any command or instruction. Because he is going to Egypt and he won't be able to see him anymore, he is asking if there is any instruction which you wish to give me. Now the prince is asking, swallow, swallow, will you stay with me one more night? So this was a request of the happy prince to the swallow once again. I am awaited for in Egypt, answered the swallow. Swallow, swallow, little swallow, said the prince. Far away across the city, I see a young man in a garret. He is leaning over a desk covered with papers, and in the glass by his side there is a bunch of withered violets. His hair is brown and crisp, and his lips are red as a pomegranate, and he has a large dreamy eyes. He is trying to finish a play for the director of the theatre, but he is too cold to write anymore. So the swallow, the happy prince is asking for one more request. He is asking the swallow bird to stay one more night because he has found one more situation wherein there is a man, okay, there is a boy who is a playwright. He is trying to write, but he is not able to continue writing because it is too cold, the climate is too cold, and he doesn't have any energy to keep himself warm. Okay, his hair was crisp and he was feeling too cold, he was not able to write. So this made the happy prince feel for him. So I hope we'll continue the lesson in the next session. I hope you would have understood till this, and we'll find out what happened next in the other session, children.